In this section, we discuss religion in Africa, and much in the way that Mazrui has talked about the triple heritage of Africa, we consider the triple heritage of religion in Africa. The religious scholar John Mbiti once said that Africa was notoriously religious. And by that, he meant the fact that religion permeates all aspects of African traditional societies. It involves the entire community. The Akan proverb, I am because we are, describes the way in which much of religion in Africa functions. There's the communal aspect that is there. And even anti-religious people have to be involved because life itself is meaningful only in the context of community in Africa. We want to talk about the three principal religious traditions: African traditional religions, or ATR as we will refer to it; Christianity, and we're going to discuss not only traditional Christianity, but also some of the African indigenous Christian movements; and finally, Islam. There happen to be other religions that are practiced on the continent, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and some New Thought religions, but they're practiced only by a very small minority. When we take a look at African traditional religions, one of the things that we'll see is that in some ways they might function similar to that of Western religious traditions. For example, oftentimes people hear about ancestors and the reverence for ancestors in Africa. But if you really think about it, ancestors are equal to saints. Both of them are departed human spirits. They're non-corporeal beings who once lived in the physical realm. Now they live in the spiritual realm and are seen in both traditions as still having interest and influence on the everyday lives of people. In addition, when we talk about African traditional religions, we're talking about roughly about 30% of Africans who still participate in traditional rites, aspects such as female circumcision, lip plates, neck rings, land diving, scarification. Estimated roughly around 25,000 people or more in 19 different countries in a survey that was done by Pew Research in 2009 were still adherents to African traditional religions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Within African traditional religions, there are both some similarities and differences among them. They're not monolithic, but there are some ways in which they are alike and ways also where they're different. Religious belief and practice are central to all aspects of life. They impact everyday lives from food, farming methods, chores, hunting, tool making, marriage and family, child rearing, treating illness, and burials. African traditional religions provide a worldview that takes into account long history of reflection and ideas about the world. African traditional religions, some scholars prefer to use the term indigenous religions, but in this discussion we're going to stick with African traditional religions. Contrary to popular belief, there are some sacred books in some of the African traditional religions. Their beginnings are not easily determined because they go so far back. They tend to be unrelated, independent, and non-missionary oriented. There's no attempts at conversion or proselytizing. We do note, though, that there are some common beliefs and practices among many of the African traditional religions, which suggest that there might be a common background or origin for them. Indigenous African religions are not traditional in the sense of being traditional because they are dynamic, meaning that they are not resistant to change and they're adaptable. Secondly, and this is important, that many African peoples identify with more than one religion. While they may profess to belong to one of the dominant religions in terms of Christianity or Islam, they still will retain their practices and beliefs that are a part of African traditional religions. And oftentimes the statistics about the widespread adherence to either Islam or Christianity doesn't always take this into fact. Third, there's no equivalent term to the word religion, but many which describe the activities, practices, and systems of thought which correspond closely to what Westerners mean by religion. Let's explore some common features of African traditional religion. They tend to have a belief in a supreme being, a belief in spirits, divinities, a belief in life after death. There's also the existence of religious specialists in sacred places. There's also the existence of witchcraft and magic practices. Scholars who study religion in Africa tell us that African societies have a belief in God, some in one supreme God who created all. Other African religions believe that there is more than one God. However, even in these religions, usually one of the gods is claimed to be the supreme God who was responsible for creating the world. There are many different language groups and many different names for God, even within a single country quite often. The one God is both alike and different from monotheistic religions. And oftentimes that God is otios, meaning that it has created the world and now is detached from the world and is consulted only in extreme cases. Some other similar concepts of God found in African traditional religion: God being the creator of all things, as I mentioned, that sustains creation, provides and protects, rules the universe. Quite often it's associated with the sky, as seen as being all powerful, all knowing, may be described and treated as a divine parent, one who supports justice. And again, when we talk about odios, not capable of being directly known by humans, it's very often the religious specialist who has that relationship with this God in African traditional religions. Some examples of high gods would be in the Yoruba, found in southwest Nigeria, Oludumare, who is the omniscient discerner of hearts. The Nuer of South Sudan named their god Quoth, who is said to be everywhere like the wind or omnipresent. And the Dinka of Sudan, Neolithic, who is described as being one with power and strength. Let's talk a bit about the spiritual world of African traditional religions. There's the existence of human ancestral spirits, the recent dead ancestors, long dead ancestors, nature spirits, bad spirits. The ancestors represent a class of superhuman agency. The recently dead continue to influence their descendants. They are the living dead. They're people because of their socially admirable qualities, such as moral integrity, longevity, and wealth, allow them to retain a degree of prominence after death. And by remembering their name, their character, their exploits, keeps certain relationships intact. And in African traditional religions, it's very important to provide gifts for the ancestors and the spirit world. And misfortune comes as a result of neglecting them, angering them, not honoring or remembering them. For example, the Talensi of northern Ghana very often provide food, beer, and grain as gifts and offerings for their ancestors and those venerated spirits. We look at the concept of humans in the spiritual world of African traditional religion. Humans are seen as being composed of a body and an immaterial essence or spiritual component, which would be in many ways much like the concept of the soul in Western thinking. But many African cultures see individuals as having more than one soul. For example, among the Fang of Gabon, the Lugbara of Uganda, and the Bambara of Mali see multiple souls. They tend to be associated with different body parts, like the head, the heart, the breath. And the soul also is thought to be tied to the ancestors, and it's also displaced during spirit possession.